History usually portrays Edward, the Duke of Windsor, as a romantic figure. Now, evidence is emerging that reveals a darker side. Did he make millions from illegal financial deals? And what exactly was his relationship with the Nazis?
Edward had jeopardized his country and the Allies.
This special uncovers the truth about Edward as it peels away the layers of an elaborate cover-up. Edward VIII, 8:30 Sunday, ABC.
Rhapsody, a stunning musical portrait of our magnificent wildlife, available on video and CD from ABC shops, ABC centres and retailers.
An ABC News and Current Affairs special. Just 2 weeks after his historic return to the White House, Bill Clinton is coming to Australia. While here, the American president will address a joint sitting of the Federal Parliament in Canberra. Address by US President Bill Clinton, live around the country at 4 o'clock Eastern Summertime, Wednesday.
Mommy, 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 ooh, yeah, yeah, ooh, yeah, yeah, ooh, yeah, yeah, ooh, yeah, yeah, ooh. La, da, da.
Good evening, I'm Maxine McHugh. Ask anyone in the clothing, white goods or car industries about tariff cuts and you'll hear a story of pain and lost jobs. But as Australia makes the hard changes to meet APEC's tariff targets, there's growing concern that other countries in the region don't share our enthusiasm for trade reform. Have we gone too far, too fast, killing off industries without any return for the pain? Tonight on Lateline, experts from the US, Asia and Australia talk about the future of APEC. So join me after the news.
Good evening, Michael Troy with Late Edition News. US President Bill Clinton and his massive entourage are tonight ensconced in a Sydney hotel. Air Force One touched down shortly before 8 p.m. Mr Clinton and his wife Hillary were met at the airport by dignitaries, a 21-gun salute and an enthusiastic public. They will undertake official duties for 2 days before holidaying in North Queensland. Diplomatic correspondent Craig McMurtry.
The first glimpse. A little late, the Clintons arrived to a small but enthusiastic welcome at Sydney Airport. Yesterday, Bill Clinton phoned John Howard about a falling Russian space probe. Tonight, there was time for humour. And after the formalities were done, Bill Clinton was exactly as officials had predicted. He was spontaneous.
Welcome to Australia. Welcome to Australia, sir.
The White House press corps is unsure of exactly what to expect on the 5-day visit, but certain of at least one thing.
Golf he will. The president loves to golf.
This is a treat. This is a bonus. This is kind of the payoff for having endured the last 4 months of the presidential campaign.
Even though they arrived late, it's an early start in the morning for the Clintons when they head for Canberra. The Prime Minister and US President will hold talks ahead of a joint press conference. Then Bill Clinton will deliver an address at a joint sitting of Federal Parliament. The press conference and speech to be broadcast live by the ABC. In the far north, the residents of Port Douglas can scarcely wait, even if all the security is a little off-putting.
I don't mind having Bill and the family out for a barbie, but I don't want all these heavy Marines.
They've been trimming, painting and grooming for days, especially Barry McGinn, owner of a pub called the White House.
For a little town like Port Douglas, this is very exciting, very exciting.
The Clintons head north for 2 days' rest on Thursday night.
The federal government is celebrating tonight after the Senate passed its industrial relations legislation. In response, a snap strike has been called at ports around the country. Waterfront workers walked off the job at around 5 o'clock this evening, but are expected to resume work tomorrow morning. The Maritime Union says the action is in protest against provisions in the Act outlawing secondary boycotts. It claims the new laws will stop unions supporting other workers during industrial disputes. Hobart's Supreme Court was given graphic details of the Port Arthur massacre today at the start of gunman Martin Bryant's sentence hearing. But the court was also told that Bryant had still not given any reason for the April massacre.
Tight security surrounded Martin Bryant's sentencing hearing as people queued to see the court proceedings. About 80 relatives of the 35 people Bryant killed attended, some in a separate room linked by video. They heard Director of Public Prosecutions Damien Bugg outline the Crown's case of how Bryant carried out his massacre. The 29-year-old sat smiling and laughing, his hair now cropped short. On April 28, the Crown says Bryant left his Hobart home with 2 semi-automatic rifles, handcuffs, rope and a hunting knife. He went to the Seascape guest house at Port Arthur. Neighbours heard shots and the Crown claims owners Sally and David Martin were Bryant's first victims. Bryant went to the Broad Arrow Cafe where, after eating lunch, he pulled an AR-15 semi-automatic out of a sports bag and began shooting. Describing the act as slaughter, Mr Bugg told how Bryant was aiming shots at people's heads, not saying anything, laughing in an aggressive way. There is absolutely no doubt as to his intent or desire to cause maximum carnage. In 1.5 minutes, Bryant fired 29 shots and killed 20 people. An Asian tourist lived to tell how he confronted death. Bryant aimed the gun at him, pulled the trigger, but the magazine was empty. Mr Bugg told the court Bryant had not given any reason for why he killed 35 people and wounded 19 others. A camera was allowed into Bryant's special cell at Risdon Prison today. The Crown hopes it's where he'll spend life imprisonment with no parole. A victim's impact statement will be presented to the court tomorrow before the defence is given a chance to offer a plea of mitigation.
More than 30 people are in hospital after a fire in the middle of the Channel Tunnel, which links Britain with Europe. The blaze was aboard a freight shuttle about 17 kilometres from the French coast. Some 70 firemen from both sides fought the fire in atrocious conditions, many suffering smoke inhalation. It took more than 8 hours to contain the blaze. Hospital authorities say none of the injured is in a serious condition. An investigation is now underway into the tunnel's first emergency since it was opened 2 years ago. Despite a hostile grilling from shareholders, directors of the troubled Coles-Myer Group have all retained their seats on the board. The fiery confrontation took place at the company's annual general meeting in Sydney.
The election of directors was dominated by discussion of the 1990 Yannon transaction and the business dealings of director Solomon Lew, whose private interests sell over $100 million worth of goods to Coles-Myer. While shareholders want more information about the Yannon deal, still the subject of an investigation, Coles-Myer says it's disclosed all it can.
And there are questions surrounding the transaction which you are welcome to ask. However, the company is very limited in what it can say in reply.
Television crews were not allowed inside today's meeting, and the official pictures from Coles-Myer do not show the level of shareholder anger. The shareholders' meeting was in fact very different, with a number of small shareholders blasting the board over perceived conflicts of interest of director Solomon Lew, with some stinging criticism too of independent director Nick Greiner. Criticism of Nick Greiner included his involvement in other boards, too many, according to some shareholders, angry about the company's performance. But after all the despair, some optimism from the chair as Christmas approaches.
Provided we have a reasonable Christmas ahead, you should start to see the impact this financial year.
The meeting ended with all current board members holding their seats.
Australian share prices fell today. One factor, the overnight slide in the nickel price. The All Ordinaries Index closed 18 points lower. Japanese share prices closed higher, the Nikkei up 160 points. On the currency market, the Australian dollar was up slightly. Now tomorrow's national weather in brief. An overnight storm in Darwin, a few showers for Hobart, mainly fine in Melbourne and fine in the other capital cities. And that's the latest from the National Newsroom. I'm Michael Troy. Good night.